Very good. Thank you, Mr. Maywood. Thank you, Mr. Odie. Thank you, Shane, for being here today. Appreciate your time.
Our pleasure.
Look forward to working with you.
Good to see you. Take care.
That concludes item number 28. We'll now move into item number 29. Disciplinary complaint against mixed martial artist Jonathan Jones. Mr. Jones.
How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you? Appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, it's good to meet you all.
I know you're demanded to be here based on the disciplinary complaint, so.
Sorry to meet under these circumstances.
We have Mr. Eccles here today, who's acting as our attorney through the Attorney General's office, so he'll present his case. You'll have an opportunity to disclose whatever you wish to say, and then the commissioners will ask some questions of you. We'll admit some evidence admitted evidence relating to your case, and we'll go from there. So we try to be as formal but informal at the same time. This isn't an official court hearing or anything like that. So, Mr. Eccles?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. The complaint in this matter is very simple. It's based upon a video that was released based upon Mr. Jones and Mr. Cormier's actions at an official press conference promoting their upcoming bout. There was clearly a brawl that was unsportsmanlike. The whole point of regulating these events, as the Commission knows, obviously, is health and safety of the fighters. They have to be held to a professional standard. They are licensed as professionals, and that means they get in the octagon or they get in the ring. There are doctors there, there are referees, there are rules, and it's all for the health and safety. And this is the complete opposite of anything like that. When you have a brawl in the lobby of one of the hotels here at an official press conference, it's bad for the sport. These guys could have been injured. Other people were negatively affected on the stage and in the lobby. And it's dangerous, and it's clearly unsportsmanlike. Now, regarding this particular hearing, Mr. Jones has counsel. I've spoken with him. They are not contesting the allegations in the complaint. They are going to ask for leniency and I guess explain the circumstances of it. We do have a video, and I don't know that it's necessary if the Commission wishes to see it again, but I would move for the admission of that video into evidence so that we have a full record here.
Would the Commission like to review the video?
One thing that I would note is that to ensure that it is properly authenticated, I think the word obligated.
Okay. Can you please set it up for us?
Yes.
You're comfortable, Mr. Jones, so watching this?
It's giving me a little anxiety, but
So I would just ask that you mark that State's Exhibit 1 and admit it, please.
Accepted.
I submit the case based upon the video.
definitely not the best one right there.
Hold on. Before you get started, I need to have you sworn in and have the attorney introduce himself as well.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Ophir Ventura. It's spelled O-F-I-R for the record. I'm the attorney on behalf of the unarmed combatant, Mr. Jones. And, we're here today, just like Mr. Eccles stated, to admit all the factual allegations in the complaint. We did not submit a formal answer for those reasons. We admit all the allegations. We are here to ask for some leniency. I just want to let you know that I have represented Mr. Jones for 4 years now, professionally and legally. And this is his first incident of any physical altercation. He's been a competitor his entire life as a wrestler and 21 professional MMA bouts. It's very embarrassing to watch that video, and at the same time, we're very apologetic. So we do ask for some leniency. I know that the commission has the right under NRS 467158 to impose a fine today. And I wanted to know that, a request kindly that if you do impose a fine against Mr. Jones this morning, that you do not impose a fine on a percentage based on his purse. If you could just do a flat fee in the event you were to fine him, so that he's not prejudiced because he's one of the higher paying athletes in the UFC. That being said, I really appreciate your time this morning. Mr. Jones wants to make a statement himself, and he wants to be here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Vivian, would you like to start with this?
Mr. Jones, you swear to tell the truth before this commission?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you realize that pursuant to NRS 467-115, that carries the same penalty of perjury as any testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
Well, I just really want to sincerely apologize to the MGM, to my bosses at the UFC, Dana and Lorenzo, to my fans, to Daniel's fans, to you guys, the commission, to all the sports I represent, the Muay Thai community, the Jiu-Jitsu community, the wrestling community, the boxing community. I made us all look bad, and as a champion, I made it. You know, it was a terrible thing. Very heated moment. You know, I've never done anything to disgrace the sport. You know, at one point in my career, I stopped a bunker. You know, I've never sworn on an interview in my 7-year career. I make a very conscious effort to be a great example and a role model. And I'm a little sick, so excuse me. So moments like this is, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me. And I realize that will come with consequences. And as a man, I say here to accept them.
Commissioner, I appreciate your words and your comments and understanding and accepting responsibility for the actions of that day. And I think you explained it pretty well. So, Commissioner Evans, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I think you have addressed the issue. Certainly there are consequences for that type of activity, whether it's provoked or unprovoked. And the extent to which it went, I suppose you got up into the heat of the moment. Did you have that planned before?
No, totally not. I've gotten in many face-offs with a lot of great fighters, and I have gone forehead to forehead with people before. I mean, Rashad Evans did it. You know, the guy named Brandon Bear did it. I've never had my throat grabbed like that. And I mean, I've seen boxers do it throughout years, and I've never been grabbed like that. And at that moment, I think that's where the real unsportsmanlike came into play. And at that moment, everything kind of just became unsportsmanlike. I definitely did not have that plan. I saw Daniel Cormier pacing back and forth, and I realized, okay, this is going to be intense because you can see the intensity. So immediately I went from a very laid-back spot to like everything about me like became heightened senses, you know. And when we walked into each other, we just came together like magnets. And I predicted that would have been really gnarly for the fans to see. I knew that there's going to be tons of pictures of that, or something like that. But that, and I had no clue that was going to happen, and I reacted in a terrible way.
So you didn't expect, as a result of your touching foreheads, that you would be pushed.
So the way I feel about that, sir, if you watch if you want to watch it again, if you watch us, we walk right into each other, you know. And I'm taller than him, so of course I need to bring my forehead down. But he never stopped moving forward, and I never stopped moving forward. So, and I do take responsibility for what I did. I'm not trying to blame him at all.
No,
but I don't necessarily think it's fair to make it sound like I came into his space, when in reality, we very much came into each other's space.
What was your purpose for that?
For this fight.
Well,
The fight is on.
It's on January 3rd. It was supposed to be this Saturday, and it got postponed until January 3rd.
He's injured, is that correct?
Yes,
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Marnell?
I don't have any questions. It seems very genuine to me. This is my first experience with you, but at this point I believe.
Commissioner Limbaugh?
Question for you, Mr. Ventura. The jurisdiction for this commission is set forth in the complaint that was filed by Mr. Eccles. Do you concede that this commission has jurisdiction over this event?
Yes.
Mr. Jones, what I'm interested in is some kind of a mindset, trying to get in your head a little bit, okay? Explain to me what your thought process was, what your mindset was when you were on that stage for the face.
You know, leading up to a fight, there's a lot of mental warfare that goes into it. And when you have two very elite athletes like Daniel and myself, guys who have never lost, we're both top competitors. We both know how to, I would say, maybe win these mental games that go into winning fights before the fight's actually happening. So when you get your throat touched like that, for me to not respond, I felt as if it could have possibly given him some type of confidence that wasn't necessarily necessary. So I kind of had to show him that I am a champion and that I'm a winner and that I am the aggressor. And that's the attitude that I think has allowed me to be able to achieve what I've done today. So my retaliation was strictly more about the fact that I couldn't allow him to believe that he had any type of mental edge over me. And so I needed to let him know that, you know, if you do something like that to me, then I'm not going to back away, or I'm not going to show you any type of fear or any type of having any type of edge over me. And you know, I know the fans. I've been a champion since I was 23 years old, 27 now. And I know what I would have received in my social media and everything if I didn't retaliate. People would have taken that for some sort of weakness. And that's my honest answer with why I retaliated. It's the mental warfare.
All right, fast forwarding in time then a little bit to the end, when you stood on the stage, when the record was being described as you howled.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Give me your mindset at that point.
At that moment, you know what? I saw the faces of fans in the audience, and if you see the video, people are cheering and like just a lot of people loved it, and I also understand that it was disgraceful in a lot of ways as well. But I realized the attention on the fight and the energy surrounding the fight was immediately skyrocketed. It actually became a fight people cared about to see. And that scream was just like it was me feeding off the audience. I mean, they just got to see me do something they have never seen me do before, something that was completely out of character for me to do. And they seemed to have loved it, and I just finished off the entertainment factor in the whole thing.
Was that part of your stage show, or was that you responding more in a, like at the conclusion of the fight, adrenaline kicking in? This is,
It almost kind of primal.
It's a great thing.
Commissioner, can I add one comment?
I got one more question as far as Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, it's my understanding that you acknowledge what you did was wrong.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're here to face responsibility for what you did. Tell me what you think the punishment should
be. I was assuming that it would be a financial thing. I've faced some punishment already, but I've lost a very big endorser of mine, one of my biggest. I've lost people who are interested in sponsoring me, that were going to be gigantic deals. And I'm pretty much willing to do whatever I have to do as far as punishment. Here, I wholeheartedly admit to what happened. It's clear what happened, and I know it's not okay. So I was assuming it would be a financial thing, but like whatever I could do, speaking to people about street fights isn't okay. And I've been in a street fight, I've like pretty much ever. So that was the first for me. This whole situation is something I did not ever want to happen.
What was the value of the endorsement that you lost?
My Nike deal.
Okay, and just ballpark, what was the value of that?
If with all due respect,
I think your Nike, I don't know if it's Nike contract prevents it from just.
Yes, it does.
All right, so what you're telling me, that give me an idea as to the percentage of your income on an annual basis.
Do you mind if I?
Some insight into the value of it.
Let me clarify my statement. I believe the contract says if a government agency requires you to disclose it,
Sure,
you can disclose it.
Sure, it's over 6 figures. If I could just leave it at that, I'd appreciate it. If you need more specifics, I'll let you know. But it's pretty damaging if you really consider it. There's another potential deal that we don't want to disclose their name, but they were interested in sponsoring Mr. Jones, and he lost that potential endorsement as well, which was a 6-figure annual deal as well. So pretty substantial.
Can either you, Mr. Ventura, or you, Mr. Jones, come up with an alternative punishment that you can suggest to us that is non-financial?
yes, ma'am, absolutely. The
You
biggest.
got an idea? What I'm struggling with is to try to figure out what is the appropriate punishment, just from my own personal standpoint. And so to the extent that what I'm looking for is some ideas, and you guys may be in the equal position as we are to come up with such an idea.
Initially, what comes to my heart is to use my influence and that I have with such a passionate fan base. I definitely believe that I've inspired and motivated a lot of people throughout my career, and I think giving back in the way of charitable, my time. That's where I could maybe give the best message, because this is something that actually happened, something that's real, and I think it's something that could make this a positive thing. I think this, to be turned around and a lesson could be learned from this. So that's what initially comes to my heart. But obviously it's not my choice.
Thank you. Appreciate your responses.
Yes, Commissioner Longwood, Commissioner Brady.
Yeah, I appreciate your attendance here today. I think your reputation in the martial arts area, and you see, as one of a gentleman. At least that's why I always heard you. I was quite shocked by the video. When I came in here today, I was quite perturbed because weigh-ins are probably it's a big concern that all of us have, because you're putting two fighters who are gearing up mentally to fight each other in real close proximity to each other. And whether it be inside or this happens to be in the lobby, it's a real concern, because you have guests. You can hear the guests that try and check in screaming and yelling. You're always afraid of it spreading, so there could be injury and all this. But you've expressed all that. So I came in here a little bit peeved, but your ability to see all the people could be damaged in this. This isn't just about you. This is about innocent people who are just coming to check into a hotel. It's your fans. It's the reputation of yourself, the hotel, and all these things. It did seem to me that you were the one that more instigated by resting your head, coming in and putting your head on his. It appeared to me you threw the first punch and this, but after hearing you here today and your contrition and your seeing the wider scope of this whole thing, and doing what Commissioner Lundvall said, I'm trying to digest what I want to do. I think you're injured now, your fight has been delayed, you'll have a fight at a future time. Let's say you fight Cormier. You're going to fight. When the weigh-in happens, what is going to be your attitude? You've had a chance to think this through. The stare down is an important part, everybody loves it. But what do you suggest for yourself and others to do differently for future weigh-ins?
This has definitely been a gigantic learning experience for me. Because I was very aware that we were going to have to do probably a few more stare downs with this new level of promotion we need to get into in the second, you know, because our fight was delayed. Just to give him his distance. Just give him his distance. You know, not even look at him. Lots of times I haven't looked at my opponents in the eyes doing stare downs, and he was able to bring out direct eye contact in the forehead.
Yes.
So just to give him distance.
Yeah, you don't have to touch each other.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah,
We don't.
and that's something I saw there that they haven't seen in a long time. There actually became contact, and that brings out those primitive type juices. But let me just tell you what our fear is. Whether if it's on a stage and it goes, it spreads the stage clap, it goes into the stands, and that triggers things, or a fight. So it could go much bigger, and that's always a fear that this commission has. That's what we always try to have at least one commissioner there, along with our executive director, to observe in case anything happens. Because in past years there has been things happen. People get injured. So I think that keeping a distance is a good suggestion. So your recommend would be to keep distance on those stair-ins, and that. Well, let me just say, I appreciate your contriteness today. You softened my heart, and I can see that you are, I believe, still the professional I believe you to be. We all make mistakes in life that we regret. So appreciate your contrition and understanding the breadth that a simple thing as that could go into, could be very damaging and haunt you for your life. I don't have any other statements.
I think, as you heard, the discipline you have as an elite fighter to fight in the ring and to train the way you do, and then to lose that discipline in a situation in a split second, and as you describe it, become primal. And we need to understand and figure out, and I think you've learned that that discipline is required at times, especially when you can hurt or injure somebody outside of the two fighters. And our obligation is to ensure that never happens again. If there are any other comments you'd like to make, we allow you to make those comments. We'll allow Mr. Eccles to make some comments, and we'll go into deliberation. We'll discuss amongst ourselves what direction we're going to head as a commission. And during that time, you're not allowed to ask any questions.
I guess the last thing I can say is that, you know, I've definitely learned a lot from this experience, and I can guarantee you guys sincerely that this would never happen again. Like I said, I've sworn one time in 7 years in an interview. I make a conscious effort to carry this sport and change what people think of all combative, you know, athletes. And like when what happened, it would never happen again. I can guarantee you guys that, sincerely.
Am I correct in understanding that your first amount is a minimum of $500,000 with opportunities for bonus beyond that?
So,
Okay, thank you. Mr. Eccles, do you have any further comments?
Oh, I just move for a finding that the violation has been admitted. As far as a deterrent effect, I don't know what the commission is going to do for a penalty, but there should be some kind of penalty that serves as a deterrent effect here, because obviously these are just people checking into the hotel. You know, lots of people could have been hurt in this, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So that's the state's recommendation.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And if there are no other questions from commissioners, I'd like to move into deliberation.
Let me start with the suggestion that honesty is certainly influential to me, and it's a very straightforward response. But I must suggest that in my career as a commissioner, I've seen very few of these scuffles at a weigh-in or a public appearance, and I am concerned about the effect of such occurrences on the public, their health and safety, as well as yours and your opponent. So I think certainly we should consider some form of suspension and allow his response to us to perhaps mediate the amount of suspension. And I think there should be a fine. But to allow it to go with nothing more than a slap on the hand, I think would be unfair to all of those who conduct themselves in a more gentlemanly manner. And you've learned that at the time of a weigh-in or otherwise. Very rarely have we seen such an occurrence one of the UFC events that I can recall. I've seen certain fighters run away from us, but I've never seen that sort of activity. And in the boxing world, I can't even, Mr. Ratner's here, I can remember one years ago, but very few of them. It's tough to conduct yourself that way, I know. And you certainly have done very well in explaining to this commission your reasons for it. And I would take that to ameliorate an overall judgment that would serve as a deterrent to others in this industry. That's all the only comments I have, and I'll follow the lead of the majority of this commission as well.
Mr. Marnell?
Mr. Chairman, my comments are brief. I completely concur with Skipper here that I think Mr. Jones is a champion, no doubt about it. I think he's going to recover from this. I think he's going to be a champion. In the metaphoric, the belt will have to be decided in the ring, but I think his attitude, his approach, and his humility are what's going to make him a lifelong champion, and he will recover from it. But I do agree that a precedent set with a smack on the wrist basically allows the gates for anybody who wants to throw down at a weigh-in is going to get a slap on the wrist. I believe that it has to come with some penalty, whether that is a suspension and fine, whether it's a suspension and no fine, or whether it's a fine and no suspension. But it has to have some economic teeth. Otherwise, there is no teeth. And I think that the good things that Mr. Jones talked about, I would encourage him for the benefit of himself, his sport, and all the combat sports to go do those things regardless. I think he's doing a lot of those things. We do the research on him. He is at the top of the list as far as professionals are concerned in my mind, but I think it needs to come with some weight.
I agree there needs to be some form of monetary fine. As far as the suspension, I think my thought process goes to a kid in a school when you're suspended for fighting. You go home and sit and watch TV. Whereas if you're called into study hall, you're required to commit, as he suggested, a volunteer opportunity in lieu of a suspension. I would like to see him be proactive in returning that obligation to explain to why a person has to conduct themselves in a sport-like manner in order to be successful. But I'll continue to listen to you, commissioners.
Well, let me articulate then as far as my observation. And I think that it's been well said, every aspect about liability. And that there has been a showing that in fact that this is unsportsmanlike conduct and an admission by the athlete that the liability portion of this complaint has been demonstrated. What I would offer as a different way to monetize the fine or the financial penalty to be imposed against Mr. Jones is an effort to capture the value of his influence and to require him to do something like 50 hours of charitable activity, whether it be here in Las Vegas in our gyms, whether it be here in Las Vegas in our schools, whether it be here in Las Vegas among our community centers, the Boys and Girls Club, so that they can have access to the athlete, that the athlete can use his influence to try to have a positive impact upon him. And I will tell you that, at least in my world, my hours are how I measure my value. And I think that in this athlete's world, his hours are also how much he measures his value. And so by suggesting certain due dates or certain time frames on his charitable contribution, and for us to put parameters on that, that could be done in lieu of a financial penalty, in addition to whatever time frame for suspension that we would suggest. That's at least some thoughts that I would throw out for consideration by the other countries.
That's great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the candid comments have been here today. I think that we talk about what Mr. Jones has learned today. I've reviewed those films repeatedly. I'll tell you who I think probably learned the most from this is the UFC. And the reason I bring that up is the person who was handling those weigh-ins was not the usual person they use. And it was something that I wasn't familiar with. And so maybe the athletes felt a little bit more inclined to come together. Mr. White is usually the person that handles those, and I always am watching him, and he's very much, his eyes, his emotions are very in tune to what the athletes are doing. And in that case, that presence, and this wasn't there. I think he was on vacation. And I think that might have helped precipitate this, not saying he's at fault, because he's not. You've mentioned you're at fault. But because of that, I think UFC learned they've got to make sure that there's a real presence there on these things. And again, I'm not accusing UFC of anything. I think we all learn by things after they happen. We then do better. I think Mr. Jones has learned a lot by this situation. And as far as we talk about financial, I think he's lost a payday now because of his injury. It wasn't because of the fight, but it was because of an injury. And so when they have maybe 2 fights a year, is that what you fight maybe?
Yeah.
About 2 fights a year, and he's lost a fight now because of an injury. I'm going to ask the question, my fellow commissioners, as just part of ongoing discussion. We say we need to give penalties because of examples to other fighters. I think the greatest example that we've seen here today is his contriteness. And to come in here and tell the truth and to take blame for it and this and from what we've all learned. And I think that there's anything from all the people that have come in here before us, as you know, and they lie, they tell stories when it comes to drug issues and this. We all know it. We catch them in it. Here we have a fighter that's come in and told the truth, accepted the blame. I think that's the best example that he could put out there and be placed for the media. And I'm one of those people that when I see this type of contrite or anything, is there always, I know for myself, I'm always seeking mercy. We want judgment for others. And so I think the greatest example and thing we could put out there is him. And I think he's going to do a good job. So I'm going to ask for mercy today. I don't feel, I understand because especially with Mr. Avancino, he's been around from some real tough times when there's been some big fights. What I mean by big fights that have happened. And so, but I'm going to just say, do we always have to impose a penalty? Or in this instance, because of his integrity and his humility, I think he is going to do that free work, and I'd like to see mercy extended. Sorry, guys.
I think I agree, and I understand there are some mitigating circumstances here, but I still think people need to be accountable for their actions, and how we hold them accountable is, like you said, his time and his persona is more valuable than any monetary decision. Yeah. But I think his influence, again, being the athlete that he is, showing discipline to others is probably the biggest thing we can get. And having him be an example for young athletes is important. And I don't know if I agree with Mr. Lundvall in the fact that his volunteer time and maybe a charitable contribution to that organization or organizations he chooses is, I think, appropriate, because I want, I deal with young kids all the time at our school, and it's having them understand that there's decisions in the short term aren't necessarily decisions for the long term, and having them understand what it means to make decisions for the long term. I think he can show that.
Then I would suggest something then. How about a couple of appearances, because the martial arts, and I think he's a student of the martial arts, is discipline. It is retaining control of emotions and everything else. Well, I can't ask you a question. I think that is part of the martial arts, is the discipline, the emotion that goes with it. And I think he's disappointed then. How about I agree with Commissioner Lundvall, his time, if he would make a couple of appearances, if he would be willing to make a couple of appearances before some groups that I think would appreciate them to see an example of somebody who you need to show contriteness, and I think we could come up with those afterwards, that he could go and appear before. And I can think of one that I've been a volunteer for a long time, where the kids because of lack of parental supervision that tend to get in a lot of fights, and they think about fights and all this. And to have you go before them, they'd be thrilled that, but to tell them about the mistake you made, to do more to help those young people than any amount of money we could find you, that just becomes in. But I think as a parent, before some kids who have issues, and I can think of group, I know you've got groups, and tell them about your situation, what you learned, would be a great service to the community.
Mr. Evans, is there any interest in trying to craft some type of a time value rather than a fine? I've got some parameters to discuss, but before we would even suggest any parameters, I think that we need to determine whether or not that there's consensus about something in lieu of a financial penalty.
Certainly I would consider whatever the commission wishes to impose here. I still sting a bit from a recent MMA contestant that we disciplined and I believed in, and only to be embarrassed a couple of days later when this particular individual backed off of what I thought he would be worthwhile for the commission. So my softness isn't in my heart right today, as well as it has been in the past. And but nonetheless, I'm certainly happy to support whatever the will of the commission is. I thought that perhaps some form of traditional punishment would be appropriate, because 4, 5, 6 months from now, another MMA fighter may say, well, that didn't cost him anything except having to go to church. And I'm not sure that would influence him. A penalty may, and certainly a suspension. But let me not beat it. I certainly would be willing to support what the will of the commission is. I don't want to be in any way obstreperous for the best interests of what you feel is appropriate for this young man.
Mr. Marnell?
I would be very much in favor of waiving any suspension for community service to be discussed. I was the president of the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada for a long time. We would welcome him in at any one of the clubs to talk to those kids. But I just cannot support a non-financial fine, whether that comes to the commission in the state of Nevada, or it goes to a charity, or it goes to future drug testing. But these types of actions without financial penalty, in my humble opinion, and I don't have anything else to say about it, have zero teeth. That's my opinion, and that's why I'm going to stick to that based on whatever motion is made.
I think my thought process is I'm going to step in here. A $50,000 fine and a 4 individual one-day appearances, because an athlete's life is judged, an endorsement life, by day of appearances. And I think 4 days is a significant amount of time if you look at their total number of available days with training and other obligations from a sponsorship or an endorsement deal factor. I'm just throwing numbers out there.
Would you be in favor of the fine too going towards something that betters our commission, betters our state, like we, looked at all of the costs that are going into this enhanced testing?
Yes,
we've looked at all of the. There's other things out there that instead of sending the money through us to the general fund to be used by some other government entity, I would much rather see the money go into the community, where it's going to, so that in my mind I can get very soft-hearted about all the positives of all of this. And it doesn't have to get paid until the next fight he fights in the state of Nevada, where we would take it out of the check, so it doesn't burden his immediate cash flow.
Well, UFC can direct it out with
Or they can figure how they want to do that. But I'm just throwing out a lot of leniency on that, but I think the money has to go.
Mr. Marnell, at this point, any fine has to go to the general fund. Now, the general fund does fund our drug testing, and through the extra money that's given for the ticket. And if it's something that this commission wants to see the legislature change, they can go before the legislature and say that they would like a certain percentage of the fines to actually go.
But if I ask you to agree to a term of a settlement situation, we can do that, right?
No. At this point, any fines must go directly to the general fund.
Well, then it could be a charitable donation
On his part.
on his part.
Tax deductible.
And it's tax deductible, even better, Mr. Jones.
And I think all of this, from what I pick up, is what we're struggling with, is to try to figure out and to monetize what is going to be a penalty that's going to impact this athlete, because we've never been down this road before. And I will tell you that that is part of my influence in trying to figure out what is fair, not only to the athlete, but also recognizes that we have to ensure that this kind of behavior does not happen in the future. It's kind of like when I drive down the highway, if I go this, I don't know what the speed limit is, or it's not posted and nobody tells me what the fine is, then I think it's a little tough not to have the understanding of what the consequences of your action are. And that is the thing that I am really struggling with as it relates to this particular circumstance. I agree that we got burned the last time that we did something non-traditional, and I am as equally as pissed off as I think each and every member of this commission is that we got burned the last time that we tried to do something non-traditional. The one observation I would make in this regard is that we have an athlete that is continuing to fight. He's not at the end of his career. He's not at the, we're at a point where that he can be able to monetize them of this particular penalty and the impact. I also agree with the idea that whatever monetary fine that we may suggest is that it not be taken until the next fight that he does have, so that it can be a negotiated item then with the UFC, so that these types of issues that can be dealt with then through the contract as well. I guess what I am not hearing, though, is any type of time frame that anyone has suggested for a suspension, or if the suspension is necessary. And so one of the things I think that we need to talk about before trying to frame a motion is whether or not that we believe that the athlete needs to be suspended.
Commissioner Lindervall, I'll just throw my 2 cents. I do not believe so. I believe that the community service in lieu of the suspension for this particular one-off scenario is, in my humble opinion, is more, will do much more good than the suspension will, and I'm completely in favor of that. However, the commission would like to craft that.
I agree with Commissioner Marnell. I think a suspension is not what we need here. We need a situation where the athlete is proactive and held accountable to be proactive. And the 4 days I threw out there was just a suggestion. If there were discussion around that,
Commissioner Adams, on the suspension?
Well, certainly if we're going to change our punishment methods to community service, we have had no precedent for that.
Exactly.
But I'm willing to embrace it with the same qualification that I'm still embarrassed from my last effort in that respect. So I would feel certainly more comfortable with the suspension. Mr. Eccles, can he train during the time of the suspension?
Yes, you can train. And regarding the whatever number of days of charitable appearances, well, I have to draft the order for this. So if you guys want to articulate how you want, or if you want any proof, say from the head of the charitable organization to provide to me or to the commission to verify such service, that might help me craft the order.
Well, it may take a page to lay out exactly what we would want done and how he complies with it. Where a suspension is much easier versus.
Right, but if you just wanted something like a verification from the head of the agency, the charitable organization, for that he has in fact dedicated a day of his time, and then I could get a letter or something like that just to prove it up, so that we can kind of, wrap this up into some kind of document showing that he actually did what you're requesting.
Is he scheduled to fight in January?
Yes.
What my thought process is if we are considering some type of community service time frame, is that not only does that have to be specific as to the number of days or the number of hours is what I think is preferable, because my day may not be the same as anybody else's day. Number two is that we need to have verification of that is coming from the organization for which that he's making the contribution. Number 3, we have to have some tasks that he would perform during the time that he is doing this performance. Not just coming, sitting in a corner, which I wouldn't imagine you to do, but we have to identify and articulate some specific tasks that we would like to see him do. And most importantly is that all of that verification has to be before us, before we authorize his next file. Is that has to be before us so that we can demonstrate that he has performed under what we are considering, and that performance then is a condition of allowing him to fight in our jurisdiction. I think that's probably the most critical component of anything that we're discussing here. So with that said, I'm still trying, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to craft a motion that may be acceptable.
Yes, I think it's acceptable, but I think it's a slippery slope for future requests by contestants who have had disciplinary violations and that we have to deal with in the future. Although this is an unusual case, and a gentleman that has been contrite, as Commissioner Brady and Commissioner Marnell have pointed out, and let's not beat it to death. Certainly I would be supportive of a good, strong community service. I don't know that 4 days, Chairman, is quite enough in my mind, and I think that we should have an opportunity to craft carefully with Mr. Eccles all the responsibilities that he would assume.
I'm going to take a crack at trying to craft a motion based upon the things that we've discussed. I'm not trying to do it so presumptuously. I'm just trying to be able to move this along. Is that we would make a finding that liability has been established on the complaint, and that as the punishment for this infraction is that we would not suspend the applicant, but that we would fine him $50,000. In addition, we would require 40 hours of community service to a charitable activity or charitable organizations or a mix of charitable organizations within the Las Vegas community. That during that time frame that the athlete would interact, whether it be with the children or the participants or those that are involved in those organizations, and that he would advance a message of basically kind of an anti-bullying message. That's something that's very prevalent within our social culture at this point in time to try to stamp out. And that his time then would be verified by the organization itself, and that verification would be supplied to us, and it would be a condition for us issuing him a license to fight in our jurisdiction again, that these items be performed in discharge prior to allowing him a license to fight.
I think that is beautiful, and I second it.
Got a motion by Commissioner Lumbaugh and a second by Commissioner Marnell. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing now, move into a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner Lumbaugh. Mr. Jones, you've heard our wishes. I hope that we can work with you to ensure that you fulfill them.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break until the next agenda item.